Gulf of Mexico stretches out like a vast, unblinking eye, its surface a mirror of obsidian under the moonless sky. Somewhere in its depths, a steel behemoth clings to the ocean floor, a remote oil rig operated by Oceanic Deep Sea Drilling, a company shrouded in whispers of secrecy. I'm Thomas Wilson, a senior drilling engineer with 15 years of experience on rigs from the North Sea to Kazakhstan. But nothing in my career prepared me for what I found on this platform. A place where the laws of reality fray at the edges, where men vanish into the water and return as something other. This is my story, a descent into a nightmare that began with the slowing of a helicopter's rotors and ended with a truth too horrifying to bear. The helicopter touched down on the helipad after a grueling 3-hour flight over the Gulf of Mexico. The air turbulent and the sea below a restless expanse of black. My legs trembled as I stepped onto the platform, the largest I'd ever seen in my 15 years on oil rigs. It sprawled across the water, a labyrinth of steel and concrete, easily triple the size of any operation I'd worked on before. Towering cranes loomed like skeletal sentinels, their shadows stretching across the deck in the pale light of dawn. The air carried the familiar tang of salt and diesel, but beneath it lingered something else. A faint, acrid scent I couldn't place, like metal scorched by lightning. I grabbed my duffel bag and followed a painted yellow line toward what I assumed was the processing station. 2 men stood in my path, their faces carved from stone, assault rifles slung across their chests. Their eyes were cold, professional, and their weapons weren't for show. ID and authorization, the taller one demanded, his hand extended. I handed over my credentials. Thomas Wilson, new senior drilling engineer. The guard scanned my papers with a handheld device, his partner's gaze fixed not on me but on the horizon, as if expecting something to rise from the waves. It was an odd focus. Most rig security watched for threats coming aboard, not from the surrounding waters. Clear, the guard said after a tense moment, returning my papers. Follow the yellow line to processing. The platform's interior was a maze of steel corridors, each corner bristling with keycard scanners and security cameras. Steel doors bore signs reading "Authorized personnel only," and the air hummed with the low buzz of machinery. This wasn't an oil rig. It felt more like a military base or a high-security lab, the kind of place where secrets were buried deep. At the processing station, a woman sat behind bulletproof glass, her movements mechanical as she took my fingerprints and scanned my eyes. "Level 2 clearance," she said without meeting my gaze, sliding a keycard across the counter. "Don't try doors marked 3 or higher." I nodded, pocketing the card. "Who do I report to?" I asked. "Foreman Robert Kendrick, East Wing Operations," she replied, pointing down another corridor. Yellow line. Robert Kendrick was a man in his mid-40s, his gray hair cropped short, his posture rigid with the bearing of a soldier. He barely glanced up from his tablet as I entered his office. "Wilson," he said, not a question, "your credentials are impressive. Palmer rigs, North Sea, Kazakhstan. Why'd you take this posting?" The question caught me off guard. Most foremen cared only about your ability to do the job, not your motivations. "Triple the pay of my last contract," I answered honestly. "And curiosity." The job description was vague. Specialized extraction techniques. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of something unreadable passing across his face. "We value discretion here. Your contract has an extensive non-disclosure agreement for a reason." He returned to his tablet. "You'll bunk with James Chun. Been here 3 years. He'll show you the living quarters. Tomorrow at 0600, you'll get your full briefing and assignment." Questions. I tested the waters. "What exactly are we drilling for out here?" Robert's face remained expressionless. "Oil, Wilson. What else would we be drilling for?" His tone carried a warning, a steel edge that told me to stop pushing. I didn't. Not yet. James Chun met me in the mess hall, a modern space with a wall of glass facing the ocean. Most rigs I'd worked on had no windows, but here the sea was on full display, its surface an endless void that seemed to swallow the light. The food was exceptional, real steak and vegetables, not the rehydrated slop I was used to. About 30 workers ate in near silence, their conversations muted, their eyes darting to the windows as if expecting to see something in the dark. "You must be Wilson," James said, approaching with careful eyes. He was in his early 30s, his company uniform pristine, but his posture spoke of vigilance, as if he were always sizing up the room. "James Chun, your bunkmate." His handshake was firm but brief, almost reluctant. He led me to an empty table away from the others. "How long have you been in oil?" he asked as we sat. 15 years, I said, taking a bite of the steak. It was perfectly cooked, restaurant quality. Started roughnecking out of college and worked my way up. "You?" 5 years here, 2 at other locations, he replied, his answers clipped and efficient. "I work the Eastern platform mostly, technical systems." I nodded, trying the food again. "This is better than any rig I've been on." James gave a curt nod. "Company believes in keeping people comfortable. Contracts are long, 8 months on, 1 month off. That was unusual. Standard rotations were 2 to 4 weeks on, equal time off. 8 months felt like a sentence, a confinement designed to isolate. 2 men approached our table, Michael Reeves and David Cohen. Michael, mid-30s, carried himself with the confidence of someone who owned the place. David, slightly older, had sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Welcome aboard," Michael said, sitting down. "How was the flight in?" "Long," I replied. "Got to see a lot of empty ocean." "You get used to the isolation," David said, his eyes flicking to James and back to his plate. I tried to steer the conversation to work. "What are the production numbers like?" The briefing materials were light on details. Michael and David exchanged a glance, a silent warning passing between them. "Standard deepwater extraction," Michael said carefully. "You'll get the full specs tomorrow." "We're hitting targets," David added. "That's the main thing." I pushed further. "What about the drilling depth? Standard or ultra-deep?" The table fell silent. Even James tensed beside me. "All operational details are covered in the morning briefing," David said, his tone polite but final. The rest of dinner was small talk, Houston sports teams, satellite TV reception. Every time I asked about the rig or its operations, they deflected, their vagueness deliberate. These men were hiding something, and they weren't even trying to be subtle about it. After dinner, James showed me to our quarters, a surprisingly spacious room with 2 beds, a small sitting area, and a private bathroom with real water pressure. Like the mess hall, our room had a window, this one facing west, where the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of blood and shadow. "Lights out is recommended at 2200, James said, "but not mandatory. Just don't make noise if you stay up." He pointed to a wall panel. "That's the communication system. Blue button for general announcements, red for emergencies. Don't touch the black button." "What's the black button for?" I asked. "You don't have clearance to know," he replied without hesitation. "So don't touch it." He picked the bed farthest from the door and turned away, our conversation clearly over. I unpacked, showered, and lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. The rig sounds were wrong. I'd been on enough platforms to know their rhythms. The creak of metal, the hum of generators, the steady crash of waves against the supports. This place had all that, but beneath it was something else. A slow, pulsing rhythm that seemed to rise from the ocean floor itself, not mechanical but alive. I got up and went to the window. The night was moonless, the rig's lights the only break in the darkness, but the water looked unnatural. The platform's floodlights should have illuminated the waves, casting a glow across the surface. Instead, the water absorbed the light, creating a circle of absolute blackness around the rig, a void that seemed to stare back. The pulsing sound grew louder, a deep thrum that vibrated in my chest. I pressed my face closer to the glass, searching the darkness. For a moment, I thought I saw something move, not waves, but a solid shape, deliberate, purposeful. Then it was gone. Behind me, James' voice cut through the silence. "Don't look at the water for too long." So he wasn't asleep. "It's against rig protocols," I turned from the window. Why? In the dim light, I saw him sitting up, his face unreadable. You should get some sleep. Morning briefing comes early. You'll need to stay sharp. He turned to the wall, and I returned to my bed, the pulsing sound echoing in my ears, the dark water haunting my thoughts. I barely slept that night, the rhythm from below a constant reminder that something was very wrong here. My alarm jolted me awake at 5:30, my body heavy with exhaustion. James was already up, dressed, and waiting. You look like crap, he said. Thanks, I muttered, rubbing my face. Is the coffee any good here at least? Better than you'd expect, he replied. Grab it on the way to the briefing. I showered quickly, the strong water pressure a small comfort, and dressed in the company-issued uniform. As I pulled on my boots, I caught James watching me in the mirror. What? I asked. Nothing, he said. Let's go. Robert doesn't like late. The mess hall buzzed with the morning shift, workers grabbing breakfast. I filled a thermos with coffee that smelled rich and strong, a luxury on an offshore rig. James led me through corridors to a conference room where about 20 people were seated. Robert stood at the front, scrolling through a tablet. He looked up as we entered, checking his watch pointedly. 5 minutes, he said to the room. I took a seat next to Michael, who nodded in greeting. The coffee tasted as good as it smelled, a small anchor of normalcy in this strange place. Robert set down his tablet and faced the room. Morning briefing, he announced. Before assignments, a reminder of our unique operational parameters. He pressed a button, and the lights dimmed. A digital display appeared on the wall, showing a cross-section of the rig and the ocean beneath. For our newest team member, Robert said, looking at me, and as a refresher for everyone else, this installation exists in what the company designates a pocket of exception. Standard physics behaves unpredictably here. That's why we have protocols beyond typical offshore safety measures. My exhaustion vanished. In 15 years, I'd never heard anything like this. Michael must have seen my reaction. He shook his head slightly, a warning to stay quiet. Robert tapped his screen, displaying a list of rules. Rule 1. No extended observation of the surrounding waters. 30 seconds maximum. This isn't superstition. It's based on documented incidents. He continued down the list. Rule 2. No physical contact with the water. If you drop something overboard, report it. Do not attempt retrieval. Rule 3. Maintain constant radio communication during outdoor work. If communication drops for more than 60 seconds, emergency protocols activate automatically. Rule 4. Report any unusual sightings immediately. Do not investigate yourself. David raised his hand. Sir, about Rule 4, what counts as unusual sightings? Robert's face tightened. You know company policy on specifics, Cohen. If you see something that doesn't belong on an oil rig or in the Gulf of Mexico, report it. The non-answer hung heavy in the air. I scanned the room. No one seemed surprised by Robert's vagueness. They knew something they weren't saying. Moving to today's assignments, Robert continued. Wilson, you're with Reeves on production floor east. He'll show you our systems. Chen, you're on monitoring station 3. Cohen, continue calibration on the southern sensors. The rest of you, check your tablets. He dismissed us, and I followed Michael through more hallways to an elevator. As we descended, I tried again. A pocket of exception? Michael sighed. Look, I know how it sounds, but weird stuff happens here. You follow the rules, you stay safe. What kind of weird stuff? I pressed. The elevator stopped, and Michael stepped out without answering. We entered a massive production floor filled with drilling equipment, control stations, monitoring screens, heavy machinery. It looked like a high-end offshore operation, a slice of familiarity after the morning's strangeness. This is East Production, Michael said. One of 4 main drilling platforms. Your station is over here. He led me to a control panel overlooking the main drill shaft. The equipment was high-tech but recognizable: pressure gauges, temperature monitors, torque readings. Your job is straightforward, Michael said. Monitor these systems. maintain optimal drilling parameters, report anomalies to me or Robert directly. I ran my hands over the controls, feeling at home for the first time since arriving. What's our current depth? 12,342 meters and descending, Michael replied. I looked up sharply. That was beyond what current technology could achieve. Like Robert said, pocket of exception. He showed me the modified safety protocols. Extra emergency shutoffs, redundant monitoring systems, evacuation routes marked on every wall. Each workstation had a direct line to security and medical teams. This feels like overkill for an oil rig, I said. Better to have it and not need it, Michael replied. He pointed to screens showing underwater footage around the platform's supports. These monitor the area. If you see anything unusual, hit the blue button. The feed showed a normal ocean floor, but the picture quality was too clear for that depth. What's powering these cameras? The resolution is incredible. Proprietary technology, Michael said, his stock answer for anything unusual. We continued the tour, but small details gnawed at me. Equipment modifications designed for unknown risks, reinforced water-adjacent barriers, strange symbols on doors that didn't match any safety code I knew. 3 days into my assignment, I was reassigned to the night shift on the east platform. The change was abrupt. One moment I was finishing lunch in the mess hall. The next I was watching the day crew leave while I settled in for 12 hours alone. Night on the east platform was a different beast. The daytime bustle gave way to an eerie quiet, broken only by the mechanical hum of drilling equipment. The production floor felt cavernous, my footsteps echoing in the empty space as I made my rounds. I spent the first few hours checking pressure readings and equipment status. The numbers were annoyingly steady, even at an impossible depth of 12,358 meters. Every time I thought about that depth, Michael's words echoed, pocket of exception. The night dragged on, the silence growing thick. At 2 a.m., I walked a loop around the platform interior, noting maintenance checks. Being alone gave me time to think about the heavy security, the strange darkness in the water, the new equipment on the southern platform that no one would discuss. By 3 a.m., I was back at my monitoring station, pouring coffee from my thermos. I logged the hourly readings, another few meters deeper. The drilling never stopped, a relentless push into the unknown. At 3:17 a.m., a scream shattered the silence, raw and terrified, coming from the lower deck. I jumped up, knocking my coffee across the desk. Another scream, now mixed with shouting. I grabbed my radio. This is Wilson on East Production. Screams coming from lower deck. Anyone copy? Static crackled before Robert's voice answered. All personnel remain at stations. Security responding. The screams continued, growing more desperate. Standard protocol said to stay put during an emergency, but I couldn't. I raced down the stairs to the lower deck, where an outside walkway circled the platform. The screams were louder now, coming from the railing. The night air hit me like a wall, damp and frigid. The scene on the deck stopped me cold. 3 security guards surrounded a worker near the railing. Marcus, a roughneck from the drilling team. He was on his back, clawing at the metal deck, his face twisted in terror. 2 guards held his arms, struggling to pull him away from the edge, while a third aimed a harpoon gun at the water. "Hold him!" one shouted over the wind. Marcus' body lurched toward the ocean with unnatural force, the guards stumbling as if fighting an invisible pull. Long scratches marked the deck where his boots had scraped the metal. "What's happening?" I called, moving to help. "Get back inside," a guard snapped. Before I could respond, the guard with the harpoon fired into the water. The projectile hit with a splash, and the water began to churn, a dark mass moving beneath the surface. Not a shark or any sea creature I recognized, just a shadow in the already black water. Marcus screamed again, his body jerking violently. One guard lost his grip, and the other couldn't hold him alone. Marcus slid toward the railing, his body lifting off the deck as if weightless. With a final, brutal pull, he went over the edge, disappearing into the water without a splash, the surface swallowing him whole. The churning stopped. The water went flat, as if nothing had happened. "Man overboard!" a guard shouted into his radio. "East platform, lower deck." More security arrived, followed by Robert, out of breath but composed. "Get inside," he ordered, his voice cold. "Lockdown protocols are now in effect." I couldn't move. What just took him? That wasn't normal. "Inside now." Robert grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door. "All personnel return to quarters immediately. This is not a drill." The PA system echoed his command as guards herded us through the hallways. I heard snippets of radio chatter, search teams assembling, boats being lowered, areas marked for sweeps. In our quarters, James was already there, fully dressed, sitting on his bed. He didn't look surprised by the lockdown. "What happened?" he asked, his voice neutral. "A guy named Marcus got pulled overboard by something in the water," I said, pacing the small room. They couldn't hold him. It was like he was being dragged by a fishing line, but there was nothing there to see. James closed his eyes briefly. "Damn," he whispered. "Not another one." "Another one?" I stopped pacing. "This has happened before?" He glanced at the corners of the room, then at the ceiling. "We can't talk about this. Not here." His warning was clear. We sat in tense silence for hours, the lockdown stretching on, announcements keeping us confined. At 7:43 a.m., the PA system crackled. "Attention all personnel. Lockdown protocols have been lifted. Day shift may proceed to normal duties. Night shift will remain on extended duty until further notice." James stood. "They found him," he said flatly. "How do you know?" "They always do." He headed for the door. "Come on, breakfast." The mess hall buzzed with nervous energy. Conversations hushed. Robert appeared after most had gathered, standing at the front. "Attention," he called. The room fell silent. At 0317 hours, crew member Marcus Haynes suffered an epileptic seizure while working on the east platform. During the medical event, he fell overboard. After an extensive search, Mr. Haynes was recovered 2 miles from the installation. He is alive and receiving medical attention. He will be transferred to a mainland hospital later today. I nearly choked on my coffee. Epileptic seizure? That wasn't what I'd witnessed. I scanned the room. No one questioned the obvious lie, their faces blank, eyes fixed on their food. "Normal operations will resume immediately," Robert continued. "Additional safety briefings regarding proper railing protocols will be scheduled. That is all." I joined Michael and David at their table, James following. "That's not what happened," I said. "I saw the whole thing. Something pulled Marcus into the water. He was dragged across the deck by some kind of force." James kicked my shin under the table. Michael shook his head. "Wilson, Marcus had a seizure, lost his balance, fell in. That's what happened." "But the water was moving," I insisted. "There was something in it." The guard fired a harpoon. "Do you want to be transferred?" David whispered. "Because this is how you get transferred, or worse." Their faces told me everything. They'd seen this before, and they knew the consequences of speaking out. After breakfast, Robert pulled me aside into a small meeting room. "I'm reassigning you to the western platform," he said. "Effective immediately." "Why?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "We need your expertise there." His face gave nothing away. "Report to Supervisor Jensen at 1400 hours. "What about what I saw last night?" "We both know that wasn't a seizure." Robert's expression hardened. "What you think you saw was distorted by darkness, distance, and the stress of an emergency situation. The medical team has confirmed an epileptic event. There were no guards present when Marcus fell. There was no weapon discharged. You are misremembering events due to stress." He leaned closer. "This is your first and final warning, Wilson. The official report states that Marcus Haynes had a seizure and fell overboard. Any alternative narrative will be considered a violation of your non-disclosure agreement, resulting in immediate termination and possible legal action. Do I make myself clear?" "Crystal," I replied. "Good. Western platform, 1400 hours." I returned to my quarters, the threat lingering like a noose. Before reporting, I detoured to the medical bay, claiming a headache. Through the door's small window, I saw Marcus on a bed, his eyes open but empty, staring at the ceiling. His body was still, save for the slow rise and fall of his chest. A medical team in protective gear surrounded him, taking samples, their movements clinical. One spotted me and blocked the door. "This area is restricted," she said. "Level 1 medical station is on the residence floor. This is research medical only. Research medical, not treatment." They weren't helping Marcus. They were studying him. At the western platform, my duties mirrored those on the east, monitoring the same impossibly deep drilling operation, the same steady pressure readings. From my new vantage point, I could see the entire rig. A helicopter descended onto the landing pad, medical personnel wheeling a gurney with a still form under a sheet. Marcus supposedly being transferred to a mainland hospital. But the helicopter didn't head toward the mainland. It turned out to sea, toward the horizon where I'd seen a research vessel disappear days earlier. 3 days after Marcus' incident, the rig felt different. The same equipment hummed, the same lights buzzed, but an undercurrent of tension permeated everything. A helicopter arrived early one morning, for men stepping onto the landing pad with the precision of a military unit. They carried sidearms openly, their eyes cold, assessing. By the third day, the East Platform crew had been gutted. 8 workers, including everyone on shift with Marcus that night, were gone. "Where's Alvarez?" I asked Michael in a corridor. He glanced at a nearby security camera. "Emergency transfer. Family issue." "And Chen?" "Rodriguez. Same thing. Transfers happen." He hurried away, ending the conversation. That evening, I visited the medical bay on sea level, using my headache as an excuse. Inside, the front area looked normal: examination tables, supply cabinets. A nurse gestured to a table. "Have a seat. I'll get you something." As she turned to a cabinet, I noticed a partially open door at the back. Through the gap, I saw a hospital bed with restraints. "Mind if I use the bathroom first?" I asked, pointing to a door on the right. She nodded without looking. I moved quickly, slipping through the back door. The space beyond was a stark contrast. Bright white lights, unfamiliar equipment, monitors with strange readouts. Marcus lay strapped to the bed, his eyes open, pupils so dilated they looked black. His skin was waxy, dark lines pulsing beneath it, veins, but not human. A woman in a lab coat drew blood from his arm, taking notes on a tablet. She looked up, startled. "This area is restricted. You need to leave immediately." The nurse appeared behind me. "Sir, the bathroom is the other door." She gripped my arm, leading me back. "Take these," she said, handing me 2 pills and a cup of water. As I swallowed them, I saw the researcher hit an alarm button. "Return to your quarters and rest," the nurse said, guiding me out. Back in my room, I waited for James. When he returned, I didn't waste time. "We need to talk about Marcus." He froze, glancing around before turning on the sink full blast. "Not here," he whispered under the running water. "They listen." "Who listens?" "Everyone." His eyes darted upward. "Marcus isn't the first. There have been 3 others in the past year, pulled into the water just like him." "By what?" "I don't know." His fear was genuine. "Nobody who talks about it stays around long." "And the others, what happened to them?" "They never came back to the rig." He shut off the water. "That's all I'm saying. We should go to dinner." The mess hall felt different that night, conversations forced, words chosen with care. New security personnel sat at a table watching everyone. No one mentioned Marcus or the missing workers. That night, the pulsing sound from below was stronger, more insistent. I lay awake, thinking of Marcus' black eyes, the researcher drawing his blood. Morning came after a restless night. As I reached for my boots, a small folded paper fell out. I glanced at James, still asleep, and unfolded it. The handwriting was cramped but clear. Research level B3. Midnight. Come alone. Who had left it? How had they gotten in without us noticing? My shift on the western platform was uneventful until midday, when movement on an underwater camera feed caught my eye. Something moved across the screen, not randomly but with purpose, circling a support column. It was darker than the surrounding water, with what looked like multiple arms or tentacles. David walked past, stopping when he saw my screen. "What's that?" I asked, pointing. His face showed nothing. "Where?" "Right there," I said as it moved into view on another camera. That movement pattern isn't like any marine life I've seen. Without a word, David tapped a few keys, changing the feed to a normal view. "System diagnostic," he said loudly, pulling out his radio. "Control, this is Cohen running diagnostic sweep on Western Platform cameras 7 through 12. Temporary feed interruption. Copy that. Authorized." He turned to me. "Sometimes the underwater feeds get interference. Nothing to worry about." "That wasn't interference," I said. "Something was moving down there. Just tricks of light in the water. Happens all the time." He walked away, positioning himself to watch me. I tried to access the original feed, but my clearance had been restricted. At midnight, I went to research level B3, my temporary clearance granting access to a clean white hallway with security doors. Most required higher clearance, but one labeled observation accepted my badge. Inside, a large window overlooked a laboratory. Dozens of clear containment tanks lined the walls, each filled with pale blue liquid, and a human, or what had once been human. Some were in early stages of transformation. Dark veins, elongated fingers, eyes turning black. Others were further along, their bodies twisted, barely recognizable. I zoomed in on a tank in the corner. Marcus floated inside, his transformation worse than before. His limbs were elongated, joints bending unnaturally, skin nearly transparent, veins pulsing with a blue glow. His eyes were alert, following the lab technicians below. He pressed his hands against the glass, mouth moving in silent pleas, but the technician ignored him, taking readings before moving on. Another tank held a figure so changed that little humanity remained, except for its eyes, which stared directly at the observation window, as if it knew I was watching. I found an archive room with physical records, original mission plans dating back 30 years. The company had discovered a dimensional weakness during a geological survey, and instead of stopping after the first exposure incident transformed 2 workers, they expanded operations, building this rig to study the boundary between our world and another. Documents outlined potential uses: bioweapons, enhanced soldiers, materials defying physics. I took pictures of everything, adding to the evidence on my phone. Voices in the hallway forced me to leave quickly, but the images of those tanks haunted me. Those people had been workers like me, one wrong move and they became specimens. My shift on the southern platform began that evening, a space unlike any drilling section I'd seen. A massive circular machine dominated the floor, transparent tubes filled with glowing blue liquid pulsing in time with the rhythm I'd heard since arriving. The depth counter read 13,487 meters, impossibly deep. Another screen showed geological layers, the bottom ones displaying formations unlike any rock I'd studied. At 2:17 a.m., the lights flickered, then dimmed. The screens showed static, the depth counter jumping to 15,341 meters before resetting. I reached for the radio, but stopped when I saw water seeping under the sealed door, an oily puddle that moved unnaturally, gathering into a pool despite the floor's slope toward the drains. We were 40 feet above the waterline, the door triple-sealed. This was impossible. The puddle grew, rising into a 4-foot column. The lights flickered again, and in the darkness, the water shaped itself into a torso, arms, a head. When the lights returned, the water fell away, revealing a creature with William's face. A roughneck I'd worked with, but on a body no longer human. Its limbs were elongated, bending at impossible angles, skin translucent, veins glowing blue. Its eyes were black voids, unreflecting, and its mouth opened to reveal rows of needle-like teeth in concentric circles. I stumbled back, hitting the railing of the monitoring platform. The creature raised a webbed hand. "Help!" it gurgled. the word barely recognizable, forced through vocal cords no longer human. Thomas. It knew my name. William, I whispered. It jerked its head in a nod. Not much time. They're letting in. I slammed the emergency button, alarms blaring. The creature recoiled, clutching its ears, mouth open in a silent scream. Security burst in, for guards in tactical gear wielding weapons that shot pulses of blue energy. Containment breach. Target acquired. One shouted. They fired, the energy hitting the creature simultaneously. It collapsed, its body convulsing, the blue glow in its veins flickering. 2 more personnel arrived with a clear coffin-like container, sealing the creature inside as it went still, floating in pale blue liquid. Robert appeared in the doorway, calm amidst the chaos. That was William, I said, still frozen. He knew my name. He was trying to tell me something about a boundary. Robert produced a syringe filled with clear liquid. Standard protocol requires a mandatory sedative following exposure to contamination. That thing had William's face, I insisted. What are you drilling for? Strong hands gripped my shoulders, holding me in place. This will help you process the trauma, Robert said, injecting me. When you wake up, we'll discuss your future on this rig. The room blurred, and as I lost consciousness, I saw William's transformed face pressed against the container's wall, black eyes fixed on me. I awoke to fluorescent lights, my head throbbing, and 4 in my arm. Robert sat beside the bed, holding a tablet. Welcome back, Mr. Wilson, he said. You've been under observation for 12 hours since the incident on the southern platform. I tried to sit up, my muscles weak. William was not present during your episode, Robert said smoothly. You experienced a stress-induced hallucination. That wasn't a hallucination, I said, struggling upright. William was there. He was trying to tell me about a boundary breaking. Robert's eyes narrowed. In that case, there are some things you need to understand. A doctor removed my 4 and left me clean clothes. Robert led me through unfamiliar corridors, security tighter here. Cameras, armed guards, fingerprint scan doors. An elevator took us to level B4, unlisted on any facility map. We entered a conference room with a long table and a large screen displaying the company logo. Wait here, Robert said, leaving. 10 minutes later, a woman in her early 50s entered, her dark hair short, her business suit out of place on a rig. Thomas Wilson, she said, shaking my hand firmly. I'm Dr. Catherine Weiss, head of Project Rift. I understand you've had an enlightening experience. She touched the table's touchscreen, and the screen showed a cross-section of the rig and ocean floor. Oceanic deep-sea drilling is not primarily an oil company, she said. What we're doing goes beyond resource extraction. 15 years ago, our sonar mapping detected an anomaly here, a thin spot in the fabric of reality, where the boundary between our dimension and another has worn dangerously thin. I stared at the screen. You're not drilling for oil. You're drilling into